What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode on the channel. I'm Al the Anomaly, and I know I've been on quite the hiatus for the last couple of weeks, but I'm back and I'm ready to talk about some anime. Today I'm going to change it up and do something a little bit different, but please, before I get into it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Today we will be talking about my favorite show of all time, and that show happens to be Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Now, before everyone asks me or questions, I'm going to lay out a few things. One, it's a mech anime. Two, it's also a seinen anime. Three, this anime has basically every category of anime all wrapped into one. So, there's a little bit of something for everybody. I'm not sure how many people have seen the show as well, but it's pretty damn good. I'm going to go on a limb and say that it's a perfect 10 out of 10. That's, in my opinion, it is, but I'm pretty sure other opinions differ. Code Geass originally came out in 2006. It was made by Studio Sunrise, the creators of all the Gundam series, and also Cowboy Bebop. Now, the story of Code Geass takes place in an alternate timeline, whereas King Henry VIII ends up having a son known as King Henry IX. But it's under Queen Elizabeth III's reign, where she fights Napoleon in a war and loses at the Battle of Trafalgar. She ends up fleeing to America, and that's where Britannia is established. So that's basically the backstory with Britannia. Now, the main bulk of the story takes place in 2010, where the Americas are both part of the Holy Britannian Empire. Asia is known as the Chinese Federation, and Europe and Africa are known as Europa United. Now, the story follows Lelouch v. Britannia, who's the main character. When he was a kid, his mother was killed in an attempt to kill his father, Emperor Charles Z. Britannia. And in that situation, his little sister was also injured, and she was traumatized from the event. She lost her ability to walk and her ability to see. And after that happened, Lelouch went to his father angry and basically blamed his father for the incident. Like, you turned a blind eye toward my mother's death, so yada yada yada. His father ended up sending him and his sister to Japan as like political pawns to give Japan a false sense of security. This is before the invasion. Now, when they were staying in Japan, they were sent under the care of Prime Minister Kururugi, Lelouch's best friend's father. So him and his sister enjoyed living there and enjoyed Japan. But during their stay, Japan ends up getting invaded by Britannia, and Britannia ends up taking over. Japan falls quite easily due to Britannia having a superior technology known as nightmare frames. So that's how they were able to take them over. And in the midst of all that happening, Japan ended up being, the Japanese citizens ended up being stripped of their rights and freedoms. And the country is known as Area 11 now, and all the Japanese are referred to as 11s. And after the attack, Lelouch vowed to his friend Suzaku that he's going to destroy the Britannian Empire. And basically, that's the backstory for how the series goes. Fast forward 7 years later, Lelouch is now attending a school known as Ashford Academy. Him and his sister were taken in by the Ashford family. Their last names have been changed from V. Britannia to Lamperouge to hide their true identities. They're both the prince and princess of Britannia, so it would be quite odd for them to just be attending the school, which is also in Japan. While there, Lelouch is a pretty popular kid. He's also one hell of a genius, and that's one of my favorite aspects of the character. But before I get into that, I'm going to finish giving the backstory that leads up to all the events. So, he ends up doing chess matches like illegally with Britannians, like higher up Britannians. He gets laughed at because he's a child, but he's a child who's beating adults in a chess game. So, while leaving one of the chess games, they notice there's a chase going on with the Britannians and a group of terrorists. Lelouch gets caught up in the mess to see what's happening, and he ends up being hauled off in the truck with the container. And this container holds a woman known as C2. She's the woman that grants Lelouch's power of Geass through a contract, and that power is what saves him from being killed by Britannian Royal Guard, who was just going to kill him and just sweep it under the rug, because Britannians are pretty dirty at this point. They do a lot of underhanded tactics, but because they have such superiority with their power, it doesn't matter, and they have no one to answer to but other Britannians, who don't care on how they treat or do Japanese kids or civilians per se. Now, with the power of Geass, which is known as the power of the kings, Lelouch has the ability to compel anyone to do whatever he says, meaning they can live for him, die for him, or operate accordingly to whatever he says, and that's the ability of Geass. And that's one of many abilities, because there can be different variations of Geass based on who's granted what. Now, with this power, it speeds up Lelouch's process to do what he needs to do, meaning destroying Britannia. He states in the show that having Geass only speeds up his plan, because the way he explains it, it seemed like he had this plan regardless of having the power or not. I say this: if he didn't have the power, the steps he's taken in the show would have been quite different from having the power. So that creates a different scenarios and like of how things or how Lelouch's intelligence would have been tested. But now gaining this ability, he starts to side with the terrorists because he wants to destroy Britannia, and there's a lot of Japanese terrorists that want to also take down Britannia. So he decides that he needs organization. I need numbers. I need something. I can't use ragtag people. So he ends up forming the Black Knights, which consists of a group of already established Japanese terrorists that he resides over, and they be under his command. And the Black Knights gain popularity in Japan against the Britannians because they're fighting for the rights of the Japanese. Lelouch doesn't like that Britannia was like suppressing Japan and doing what it was doing to its civilians people because it's morally wrong. And that's where one of the greatest conflicts in the show is morals. It shows how doing the right thing can be messy, but also doing the right thing for the sake of justice doesn't always have to be a bloodbath. But Lelouch's main goal is to create a better world where him and his sister Nani can live in peace. That's his main drive for the entire series is his little sister. That's what keeps him going, and that's just what he cares about the most. But in the process of doing all that, Lelouch adopts the identity of Zero, and the man behind the mask, and he ends up taking charge of the terrorists, the Black Knights, to rebel against Britannia. And with the power, he believes he can accomplish it all in the blink of an eye. Lelouch's Geass has to be activated through direct eye contact with someone, and the way he uses it is quite amazing. You may think direct eye contact may be something easily to avoid, but when you're messing with a genius like Lelouch, he can flip that on your head like quite easily. But Lelouch uses the ability of Geass to find his mother's murderers, destroy the Britannian Empire, and create a world where him and his sister can live in peace. Doing all of this doesn't come without a cost, though. Since Lelouch doesn't know the full extent of his powers, he has to be very wary. And in doing so, Lelouch has quite the hurdles. His friend Suzaku ends up becoming a member of the military, and the way Suzaku doesn't like the way Zero operates, Lelouch when he's his other persona. So his best friend becomes one of his enemies. Then later on throughout the story, things just like they grapevine out of control. He has to combat his best friend, the strongest army in the world, and a bunch of different other people trying to, throw a wrench in his plans. Not to mention his half-siblings that are also in Britannia. But this whole event changes the course of the world off of one man's actions and one man's will. Now, saying that, I'm gonna get into some of the best things or some of the things I really like about the show. Next to its characters, the mechs, the fighting, the music, the soundtrack, just so many different elements that makes this series like one of the greatest. And there's a YouTuber, Nux Taku, I'm gonna give him a shout out for this, but I agree with his statement wholeheartedly. If you have watched Code Geass 100% of the way through and it's not in your top 10, I don't really think you like anime. Because this show, as I said, has a bit of everything. How can you not like a show that gives you the experiences of war, the morality of war, making the right or wrong decisions during war? And that's where Suzaku's whole conflict comes within himself. He may be Japanese fighting for the Britannians, but he wants to create a better world for the Japanese through doing so. He doesn't think you can just do things with no accountability, and that's where he comes in with his whole issue with Zero. He doesn't like the way Zero operates. He thinks it's messy. You're doing it wrong. You're evil. You're an evil person, and that's what's so great because it's like a game of cat and mouse. Because at first, neither knows who they're fighting yet. Then eventually, it comes to light that Lelouch is fighting his best friend. And it's not until the end of the first season where Suzaku finds out that, the man behind the mask is my best friend. But he states that he's always known, and he's always had the feeling, but he never confirmed it. Now, aside from all the war and whatnot, the nightmares are one of the best things about the show. You'll see a different array of combat abilities and just like mecha within the show. And one of these mechs is perhaps my favorite, and that's the Lancelot. That's what Suzaku pilots. The Lancelot was originally created for Lucius' half brother that gets killed in like the first episode, but that ends up becoming Suzaku's mech, and it's one of my favorite because Suzaku ends up being one of the best pilots in the show, next to Colin Stotfield, who's also part of the Black Knights. Her character, Colin's character, is quite intriguing because she's half Britannian, half Japanese. So she goes to Ashford Academy under her Britannian name, which is Stotfeld, but her actual last name is Kozuki, her Japanese last name, because her mother is Japanese. And the weird thing about that is that her mom was a mistress for her father, who was Britannian. So her mom was a maid. Her mom was a maid who lived in the house with her and her stepmom, and it was quite the issue for her. And Colin always like resented her mother for staying and doing all that she did. There's a lot of ground to cover with the show, so I'm just like talk about some of the highlights that I think people enjoy. Next to the great characters and the plot, the music is one of the best things. It has some of the best openings I can think of. I really enjoy how characters in that show change and evolve throughout like the midst of war. That's one of the things about many Gundam series as well, is the war. War is like a big part of a lot, and war changes people in a lot of ways. And throughout the series, you see how drastically, or let's say, how much further Lelouch will go to get his plans achieved. And same thing with Suzaku. See how far his plans go, and it's like a never-ending battle type of thing. But this is one of those shows I definitely think people should watch, and like not many people have watched the show, which is quite surprising. It's such a good show. Oh man, I get quite offended when people haven't watched it. They're like, "Oh, I haven't seen Code Geass. You haven't watched Code Geass." I'm like, what did you watch? Well, I've been watching Naruto like 5,000 times. I don't got no issue with Naruto. It's just that everyone's seen it. Watch, just step out of your comfort zone when it comes to watching an anime, and I guarantee you'll find something that you like. Now, I could talk about characters from the show, but if I'm talking about characters, I have to mention one character from the Chinese Federation. His name is Shin Kei. Now, just imagine there's a character with both Lelouch's traits and Suzaku's traits, and that's the character Shin Kei. Lelouch says this one line where he's as smart as I am, but as good as a warrior as Suzaku. You could say that the gods have blessed him twice, and it shows. Not only is Shin Kei one of the best characters in the show, he also pilots one of the best mechs in the show, and hands down, he's shown to be possibly the best pilot because he handles Colin, who is, I would say, the best pilot in the show. He handles her like that, and it's not even. I'll admit this: she doesn't have her final form of her mech, but he does it when she has a mech that is causing havoc. Now, the mechs in the show are some of the best mechs I've seen. Notably, that the Nightmare frames they're big, but they're not like crazy giant size like Gundams. Well, certain series of Gundams. They're pretty small, and in the beginning they don't really fly, and then they progress to having the ability to fly with something known as the float system. But there's quite an array of mechs that you can choose to like from. I have quite a few favorites. Lancelot being my favorite. Then it goes the Gorin, that's Colin's mech. Then you have the Zangetsu, you have the Vincent, the Tristan, the Shenhu. There's quite a bit of mechs in the show to like and choose which ones you like. But that's one of the best aspects of the show, is the mechs, because they're basically how the wars fought and how all the fights will be fought is with mechs. Then you have the fights that are psychological. You have people dealing with losses of family, loved ones throughout the war, the ongoing conflict. And the way the Britannians treat the Japanese, or the 11s, so to speak, is quite bad. They will kill indiscriminately if they even suspect you of being a terrorist, and that's where you see a lot of these people just hating the Britannians for doing so. And some people have come to terms with how they're being treated with the Britannians, my mistake. And they come to accept it, some don't. And that's when you have some of the freedom fighters joining up with the terrorists and trying to fight the Britannian Empire. When it comes to Lelouch's intelligence, the only reason I would put him in like the higher echelon of intelligence is due to the third movie. due to the third movie. For those of you who don't know, the series has been turned to a series of compilation films, like 3 of them. And the third one takes place after the series. Now, I haven't watched the first 2, and there's slight differences, but it's basically the same general story. I would say maybe there's characters that die, maybe there's characters that didn't die. But the third one is where it gets juicy. There's a part where Lelouch has to figure out this, the villain's ability, and her ability is to, it's a Geass that lets her go back 6 hours. So basically what she does is she would kill herself and she'll go back 6 hours. Now during the climax of the series, during the climax of the movie, Lelouch is like, why are we losing? This plan should have been perfect. How did they know we were coming? How did they know? So he deduces it from, I think, 22 abilities down to like 3. Then at the end he finds out and says, oh, your ability is to go back in time. And like he's able to just like deduce that. So the movie puts Lelouch in like this high tier of like characters when it comes to intelligence. I personally believe he is smarter than Light Yagami. A lot of people may be mad that I'm saying that, but I believe he is. Let's face it, Light Yagami did a lot of stupid things, and we can argue that both of them have done things where they could have gotten caught or lost. But I keep going on how Lelouch stated it, that Geass only sped up his plan. It didn't really change what he was going to do. I mean, you could say it changed steps that he's taken to do his plan or execute it, but he was always going to do it no matter how long it took. But they have 2 different situations, but I will personally agree that Lelouch is smarter, in my opinion. Of course, there's levels to intelligence because Lelouch isn't a scientist, but Lelouch is smart. Let's say we know how Senku from Dr. Stone, how intelligent he is, and he's ridiculously intelligent. That's a different type of intelligence when it comes to like, tactical, strategical, stuff like that. We can definitely say Senku's like an Einstein, and you could say Lelouch is like a tactical genius. Those are 2 different types of intelligence. But Lelouch displays it in many ways, and he makes it beautiful. And one of the best things about him is that he's so arrogant. I love the arrogance when like he knows he's about to get you. He also has some of the best lines in the world. And not to mention when his plan near the end, or I think it's like the second to last episode of the series, where he tells the world that I'm in control of like, the Flare warhead, and then he tells people, baby subjects or baby world, it literally gives me chills. I have him tattooed on my arm for the sole purpose of me loving the character that much. I can only give so much about the show without enough context, and I would rather someone watch the show so it'll be easier to talk about and get into. But there's so much about the show that I can't just fit all into one video. So maybe I'll do like a rundown or like an episodic thing for the show, or maybe I'll do it for different types of shows. I know I have something planned coming up for Tokyo Revengers and Mushoku Tensei, but Code Geass is one of those shows that I would definitely like to do more extensive or more deep dive into the series about. There's a lot of characters I glossed over, and there's a lot of significance of the series that I left out, but it's a lot to unpack. All I can say is it's a really great show, and it is my #1 anime of all time. There's a lot I could say would be in like my top 5, top 10, but like overall, Code Geass is my #1. Like, it's flat out my favorite show, and that's due to the fact that there's so much in the series that it's hard to ignore a lot of it. But I would like to do more videos regarding like deep diving into some of my favorite shows. And I know it's been a while since I've done a video, so this one I wanted to make. Let me talk about my favorite show. Let me talk about something that I love, and that's what this video basically is. I wanted to find something that I really love and just talk about it. And I know I jump around a lot when it comes to the show because it's just so much to just like absorb. If this video could be an hour long, I would make an hour long, but I don't want to make an hour long video. At least not a video. Maybe a podcast. Maybe I'll look down the line to doing a podcast about it, or other animes, or just talk about stuff. But I wanted to make this short and sweet, so some people can get a good feel for how the show is, because the show is definitely going to hit. I mean, it will make you sad, happy, and just feel bad. It's just so much, and there's so many moments you just wish didn't go the way they did. It kind of gives me a Game of Thrones feel with how things happen, and it just makes me angry, or just leaves me like this. and I'm just mad. But I definitely say this is one of those shows that if you skipped it, look back on it, at least give it a chance. At least give this show a chance. I know many people out there like Attack on Titan, shows like that, Demon Slayer, stuff like that. But this is one of those shows that's not a shonen that I would say is worth the investment. Because people will sit through 500, 600 episodes of animes, and there's a lot of filler or mediocre shit that goes into it. But Code Geass is one of those shows that it's there for the story, for the message, and to understand that, you know, when it's war, some things are morally wrong, some things are morally right, but at the end of it all, it's fighting happens, and you either find a way to stop the fighting or keep the fighting going. And there's a lot of lessons you can take away from watching the show. But I look forward to making more videos like this, talking more about my favorite shows. As I said, this one is just out of the blue. I wanted to make something for a comeback video since I've been gone or off for like 2 weeks. I definitely plan on being more on top of my videos. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to like the next video I'll come out with. So just stay tuned for that and just bear with me. I once again apologize for not being able to deliver stuff in the last couple of weeks. And I know everyone has their own favorite channels they like to watch, and it's cool. I'm still here. I will always be here. But that's all I have today. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video. Let me know how you think. Let me know what other videos you would like to see from me. More of my favorite stuff, more of your favorite stuff. Give me an anime, recommend an anime. I'll watch it and I'll make a video on it. I just want to be engaged with my community a bit more, talk a bit more about the things we like, we enjoy. I know I have to do a video on something not anime related. I'll let you all know in the next video of what that might be. But once again, thank you all for enjoying and watching, and I will see you all on the next one.